Good day, all. I'm Sue Smith, the Finance Director for Longboat Key. Thanks for watching this short video to get up to speed on FEMA. The purpose is to give all employees an overview of what takes place when we have a major storm event and the documentation required in order for the town to be reimbursed for preparation and any damages that we may incur. This is mandatory training for new employees and first responders. There is also new guidelines for administrative staff we'll go over. So hurricane season begins in early June and continues through November. As you can see, Longboat Key sees its share of tropical storms and hurricanes. This is a list of storms that came through our area where we actually filed claims with FEMA. The most extensive damage, as you can see, is in the beach category G. Money from Debbie was used in 2016, and we are still trying to collect money under Hermine. That gives you an idea of how long it takes to get this money reimbursed to us. So some of the course objectives is to provide an overview of the public assistance program, the required documentation, and then we will review the daily log, which is also known as a 214, and your responsibilities to make sure documents are filled out properly and turned in timely. FEMA is the Federal Emergency Management Agency under Homeland Security. They provide reimbursement only if we meet the eligibility criteria, and there are many compliance requirements. Documentation is key to the funding. The governor requests a declaration from the president, and then there must be a declared disaster made by the president. Both the county and the town must also declare an emergency. We need to meet cost thresholds through either Sarasota or Manatee counties. And being in two counties, we actually get a choice to submit a complaint with either county, whomever meets the threshold. We generally follow Sarasota before Manatee. We have written mutual aid agreements that need to be in place before an event, and all our procurement contracts need to be in place prior to an event, including debris removal, food, and supplies. So FEMA does not pay for everything. Our property and flood insurance coverage is applied first, and then the remaining eligible damages are split 75% FEMA, 12.5% state, and 12.5% is the town share. There are 7 categories of work that could potentially be included on a claim, but the primary categories we generally claim are debris removal, which is category A, emergency protective measures, category B, and beach erosion under category G. Category C through G is what they call permanent work and has to be completed within 18 months. For category A cost, the town usually contracts with a debris removal company, but that does not mean that some of our first responders and public works employees won't be out there paving a path to get in and out of the island. So contracting out does not absolve us from our responsibility to supervise the performance of the contracts. We need to provide clear direction, supervise and have a system of control and verification of monitoring services. These monitors that we also contract with have to follow the debris from the time it's picked up to the time that it's dropped off at the dump. And we had a problem with this in the past because our monitor was not doing their job. Category B, emergency protective measures, are measures taken before, during, and after a disaster to eliminate or reduce an immediate threat to life, public health, or safety, or to eliminate, reduce an immediate threat of significant damage to improve public and private property through cost-effective measures. It is your overtime that is usually eligible, not straight time. But if we do call back someone from leave or hire outside personnel that are outside of our regular budget, they will be reimbursed for straight time plus any overtime. Any equipment that you are using out there related to the disaster is eligible. For town-owned equipment, they will reimburse us on an hourly rate or pay by the mile. We have an equipment list that's published by FEMA annually. You should refer to this. It should be in your Go Kits. And you will need to put coding on your daily log for that equipment that you are using. The hours for hauling equipment or the miles driven when hauling people are also eligible. Rented equipment is 100% reimbursable for the actual cost paid as long as our procurement rules were followed. Here is just a 1 page of the equipment list to give you an example of what it looks like. It's about 32 pages long. You will need to find the equipment you used based on horsepower and capacity and put down the cost code provided here along with the number of hours used and how you were using the equipment. For example, in this example here, you can see a police automobile patrolling is paid by the mile, but a stationary automobile with the engine running is paid by the hour. So you need to pay attention to those cost codes. Also under category B is materials used. For example, sandbags, plywood, nails, barriers, etc. You will need to document what quantities of materials you used and how you use those materials. Volunteers and donated resources are also reimbursable, and we have a separate 214 for volunteers. So what happens when the supervisor activates protocol? Documentation kicks in immediately. If you are getting ready for the storm, getting sandbags ready, start the 214s immediately. You don't have to wait for somebody to tell you to do that. And we don't need to wait for any kind of declaration from the county or the state. So where will you charge all of these expenses and your time? Once finance is made aware that a major storm is going to affect us, usually when we are in the cone, we create a project code and attach it to several accounts shown here at the right. All materials will be charged to the Emergency Management Department 20-21. You will not charge your own budget. All regular and overtime costs will be continued to be charged to your budget until we have a chance to verify and confirm all of the data in these 214s. You see, the payroll is going to get processed regularly, and we won't know, payroll won't know what hours are being charged to the storm until after the 214s arrive. If we do not have good paperwork, FEMA will deny the claim and the costs will remain in the department's budget without reimbursement. Here is a sample daily log. These should be printed double-sided. If they are printed one-sided, we may not be able to match them up if they get separated from each other. This form must be completed by all employees submitting time using military time. 1 sheet for each shift. Start and end time must be entered. Total regular and total overtime hours, the description of what you are doing, and also include break times for lunch, dinners, and sleep times. They must be on separate lines and documented. If we have any outside help from other jurisdictions, they must also fill out a 214 and provide it to us. This is a sample military time chart if you need it. One trick is just to add 12 hours to the time. For example, 2 p.m. plus 12 will be 1,400 hours. Supervisors, second level supervisors are exempt from being paid overtime because we're salaried. So however, if our town manager should authorize the payment for overtime to exempt employees for an event, then those costs will become eligible and the 214s are going to be required. So best practice is to just fill them out regardless of whether we have approval or not. And as I mentioned, any volunteers who help out have a 214 with the watermark volunteer on it. These should also be in your Go Kit, and they should also be in the file system that we're going to go over shortly. Now we're going to go over the sample 214. This is a sample Public Works employee, Dave Matthews, who recorded his department, the date and the name of the storm where he worked that day. The site location includes the county. As you know, the town is split between 2 counties. So for just make sure that you put the location and the county. In this particular case, this Public Works employee was off duty and called back. As you can see, we're using military time here. This employee's normal shift is 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., but he was asked to come in at 5 a.m. and worked through 7 p.m. So you can see here the first 3 hours included 2 hours of overtime for coming in early. And the rest of the day, he went to Ace Hardware. He bought some tools for debris removal. He used a chainsaw to work on debris removal, took a lunch break, and then did wood chipping at the end of the day for additional overtime. So you can see he had overtime hours in the morning and overtime hours in the evening. Everything is broken out for all he did and all of the equipment he used here. On the back side of the form, this shows what he purchased on the P card at Ace Hardware and the equipment he used that day. It also shows the proper sign off and signature sign off. Also here you can see the P card purchases at the top and the equipment that he used in the center, and the proper codes were used from the equipment list. And again, here is the sample equipment list that we talked about earlier. Meal forms. If you were eating out in the field and we truck in meals, the on-duty supervisor has to get signatures for everyone eating. FEMA does not pay for group outings at restaurants. This is like if we actually truck in meals. These should be in your Go Kits. If you do not have any, we will get you some. And there is also one in the training forms folder on the G drive. What happens if we lose total power and we cannot even reach our timesheet software? Well, we have to go back to paper timesheets. This is the old-fashioned ones, ones we used to use in the old days, and these also should be in your Go Kits. Some common areas and FEMA kickbacks that we have experienced is generally we can't read the handwriting. Sometimes we can't even tell who filled it out. We're not receiving the forms timely to be able to make those journal entries for payroll dollars, or somebody entered their nickname instead of their legal name. We need these records to match your legal payroll documents. For labor, one employee wrote down 1 to 6 p.m. that they had disinfected the vehicle. That did not fly with FEMA because it could not have possibly taken that long to disinfect a vehicle for COVID. An employee wrote 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. for a total of 5 hours. So that math was incorrect. Or the description of the work performed just said Storm Irma. It didn't say what you were doing during Storm Irma. So we definitely need those descriptions detailed to know what you were doing. On the equipment codes were left blank, or hours were missing, or the miles were missing. That's an automatic rejection. When 2 or more people in one vehicle, only the driver can claim the vehicle under equipment. The passenger does not claim that. And for materials, we have had events where absolutely no materials were listed. Now, I don't know if that is the actual case, but if there were materials used, we missed out on that reimbursement. Now, on the administration and document filing section, this is a little bit new. So FEMA allows reimbursement for administration of managing the event and the time it takes to do all the paperwork to claim costs under FEMA. But it's limited to 5% of the total storm costs. They won't automatically pay this. We have to show what we did to incur those costs. So if a storm was $100,000, we're only going to get $5,000 to do all of that paperwork. One last step for department and administration is to summarize the 214s onto this labor summary sheet. This labor summary sheet is in Excel, and it has all of the people's names in the department with their rates automatically filled in. So all you're going to need to do is fill in the data from the 214 hours that were related to the storm and plop them in to this sheet. We need a name of the person who will be responsible for each department in Public Works, Fire, Police, and PZB, and Tennis. All town hall people will be done by the finance department. So the person in charge or has been named in charge will enter the week's dates at the top and simply copy the hours reported on the 214s for each employee. It's going to calculate the total cost, and it gives finance a way to report the cost to the county, who will need to know if what our costs are if we're going to reach a threshold for a claim. Finance has no way of knowing from payroll records, as all the payroll is being charged to the regular departments. This is the only way finance will know how much costs we're being incurred. Not to mention the complication of overtime for fire department is only paid every 3 weeks. So we would never be able to easily quantify that. Another part that's new is we have adopted a standard tree structure of folders, as well as a file naming convention that will be consistently used for every storm. It provides consistency, efficiency, and organization so that we can find information quickly and avoid duplicated folders or avoid having to look for important files. In this example, you see 7 folders and the FEMA forms and instructions. So for messaging, this is for Susan Phillips and the town manager department to be putting any kind of messaging she's sending out to the public. Communications and declarations, that's all of the communications we received for the state, the county, as well as our own ordinances and emergency declarations. Force account labor, folder 3 is your 214s. That's going to be subfoldered with fire, general, PZB, police, public works, and tennis. And in each side of those folders, you're going to have your 214 activity logs and that labor summary that I described in Excel. For materials and supplies, contract work, those will definitely be used by procurement and finance as we start to collect invoices. Damage assessments will be filled in by planning and zoning and any other person that has damage assessment forms that they have been filling out. Insurance will be filled in with documents from our own carrier and that we need to fill out for their claim forms. And when you see, as far as the naming conventions on the right, the biggest one is the force account labor. So the person in charge of collecting the 214s is going to collect 7 sheets possibly for each employee. They will be required to fill out the labor summary in the Excel using just the hours that they had storm-related hours on and break that out between regular and overtime. Then they will take those 7 sheets for, say, Joe, and scan them into one PDF. Those 7 days, 7 sheets, one file called Joe's last name, followed by first name, and then the week ending date. That is going to be the name of your file. And then you're going to throw that into the 214 activity log folder. That is going to be the best way for us to track each employee and the week in question. After that's all done, finance has its job to match all that up with the payroll records. FEMA is going to require the payroll journal, a copy of the paycheck, canceled check, or if it was paid by ACH, we have to provide the ACH register and the bank statement. All those different little documents have to be combined with the ones that you're putting in these folders before we can submit to FEMA. It is quite a process. Anything you can do to help us is going to really be appreciated. So in summary, please fill out your daily log legibly for every shift. Employee and supervisor must sign off. Log your storm event hours on the normal timesheet. And department administrator collects the 214 for the week, fills out the labor summary report for the work week. Department administrator scans the 214s, deposits the electronic copies into the designated storm folder on the G drive. Department administrator then sends the originals to finance. And this is very important because when the county calls asking for our assessment of damages, we will be able to respond accordingly. And I just wanted to go back. So in that G drive, you'll see there's a hurricane planning folder. Within the hurricane planning folder, we are going to name that storm here. It's going to say Hurricane Isaac or Hurricane Ian. So that is where all those files are going to go. If you're in doubt, please call finance anytime. We are here to assist you, and thank you for paying attention, and be safe.